the biggest names in audio are all right here. And our iHeartRadio, we have a podcast out now called the Dream Team Tapes. Now, Jack McCallum is an award-winning author. He worked for Sports Illustrated. He wrote national bestsellers. He joined me on my All Ball podcast, and he has these tapes, and we created a several-part series. How many parts do you know? Is it 10 parts as well? Not 8-part series. Well, how we got to 8, I don't know. I just know that Jack has an 8-part series, which is available on your iHeartRadio app if you want to download them. And it's never before heard conversations with Dream Team members during the 1992 Summer Olympics. What's come out of it is Michael Jordan's on tape, his outright admission that he didn't want Isiah on the Dream Team. Here is Jack McCallum. This is on my podcast discussing it.
No matter what you heard, there was never much of a chance for Isiah Thomas to make the Dream Team. For this reason mainly, Michael Jordan did not want him. I wrote that back in 1992 because a source close to the situation, no, not Jordan himself, told me that was the case. But Jordan's reaction to the question, did you keep Isiah off the team, was either angry, no, dismissive, no Isiah questions, please, or coy, hey, I didn't pick the team. So when I went to interview Jordan for the Dream Team book in 2011, I wondered how I would nudge the conversation over to Isiah Thomas. But against all odds, Jordan went there himself, suddenly and without warning.
And when they called me to ask me to play, Rod Thorne called me and said, Rod, I won't play with Isiah Thomas on the team. He assured me, he said, you know what? Chuck doesn't want Isiah, so Isiah's not going to be a part of the team.
If you didn't hear, he said, I don't want to play if Isiah Thomas is on the team.
Wow. Okay. But I heard something in there that's completely different than just the full frontal kind of brazen statement. He's basically the opposite of Jimmy Chitwood, right? Do you guys remember Jimmy Chitwood? Jimmy Chitwood is the star player. What was the high school? Why am I blanking on the name of the high school in Hoosiers? Hickory High School, who doesn't play, and they're getting ready to fire the coach. And he walks in, he says, I got something to say. They'd already taken a vote as to if the coach stays, the coach goes. I think it's time for me to start playing ball. And everybody goes, yeah, about time we got rid of that guy, right? And he's like, one more thing. Coach stays, I play. Coach goes, I go. Ultimate baller move. Jordan did the opposite. You want to have Isiah Thomas? Fine. I ain't playing with Isiah. But that's not the part I heard. The part I heard was Chuck Daly, head coach of the Pistons, head coach of the Dream Team. Chuck Daly won 2 championships with Isiah Thomas as his point guard. Michael Jordan says he was told, hey, don't worry, Chuck doesn't want him either. Done. This is from my All Ball podcast. This is when I asked Jack McCallum, what role did Chuck play?
Chuck Daly had certain guys he wanted. They began with Jordan. They went to Pippen because of his defense. They went to Chris Mullin because of his shooting. They went to David Robinson because of his center athleticism. So there was this group of guys that everybody wanted, probably Charles Barkley because of his, he just was going to be unstoppable. Isiah was not in that group of guys. So he never really had any traction. And part of the reason that Jordan has always been pissed off when it's been brought up was, okay, yeah, I said I didn't want him, but nobody else.
Right, nobody else did. So here's the thing, okay? Is it fair to say that Jordan wasn't even close to being honest during the Last Dance documentary in regards to why Isiah Thomas wasn't on the Dream Team? Yes. Okay. On the other hand, if the true defense of it was, not only did I not want him on the team, Magic didn't want him, Bird didn't want him, and his own coach, Chuck Daly, didn't want him. I think you end up doing far less harm in a calculating way if you're not fully forthcoming. Because he didn't wipe his hands of it, right? He didn't wash his hands of it. What I believe he said was, I was never asked about Isiah Thomas, right? I think that's what he said in the documentary. I was never asked about Isiah Thomas. Which, again, if we listen to the tapes do say don't say he was asked about it. He just volunteered, if Isaiah's playing, I ain't playing. And they said, don't worry, Chuck Daly doesn't want him on the team. All right, well, that's done. We move on. Mike, and look, maybe this is the Jordan defender in me, but it's also the reality. He didn't have anyone who was the rabbi in the room. He didn't have anyone sitting there and going like, hey, either Isaiah's on this team or I'm not playing.
Winning has a price. Isaiah doesn't realize.
And it's interesting. It actually does circle back to what Michael Jordan said about his own way of winning. Winning has a price. Right? Wasn't that the quote? Winning has a price? Isn't that what Isiah Thomas is feeling right now? That winning has a price? It does. It has a price. And the way in which the Pistons won, which was effective, which did intimidate many of the Bulls, which did kind of push around the league and they became the bad boys. Hey, they embraced it, and they all, because of their success, those guys have had a lifetime of success, right? Like, this is interesting. Isiah Thomas didn't get to be on the Dream Team, but he did, in spite of the fact that he had no real background on it, get to run the Toronto Raptors from their infancy. He did, though he had no experience running a league, get to run the CBA. He did get another opportunity. He got the opportunity to be a head coach, even though he never coached before, with the Indiana Pacers. He got another chance to run an operation with the New York Knicks. He was broadcasting the 1998 NBA Finals where Jordan hit that last shot. Like, he has gotten a lifetime out of his incredible career. But winning has a price. And the way in which they won cost him friendships, relationships, and a chance of immortality to be on the most decorated, most celebrated American Olympic team in the history of the sport.
MJ knew it. That's why he struggled so much.
Right. MJ knew it. Right? Like, Michael Jordan knew it. He knew what it meant. He knew how it made people feel. He knew probably what it did to his personal life at times. Winning did have a cost. The price is not universal across the board. If you want to know why Isaiah's not on the Dream Team, it's not just Jordan, it's Chuck Daly. When Chuck Daly, who coached you, didn't say, hey, if Isiah ain't playing, I ain't coaching, then you know he didn't have his back. When Magic Johnson, who's supposedly his best friend, didn't go to the mattresses for him, then you know he didn't have his back. Winning, as Michael Jordan said, has a price. For Isiah Thomas, the price was the Dream Team. You know, for Michael Jordan, it was his privacy and at times relationships with his teammates. Winning has a price. It's just the payment is different for different people in different times. Chris Mannix joins us from Sports Illustrated, NBA Insider. All right, how close are we to having an announcement on what they're going to do?
Well, I think the NBA would like to be able to announce something on Friday. They have a call scheduled with the general managers on Thursday. There's the Board of Governors virtual meeting on Friday. And I think at that point, the league would like to have something to be able to submit to kind of put forward to, move this thing in a forward direction. The problem is, as we sit here and talk on Tuesday, there really isn't anything concrete yet. There are still ongoing discussions about how many teams are going to be involved in all this, how it's all going to work. Will there be some kind of play-in tournament at the end? It's a very fluid process. I mean, I hear from different people, every hour that suggests something else is on the table. So, the short answer is that they'd like to, move this forward on Friday, but it's going to take a lot of work to get there.
Michelle Roberts said she wanted certainty. Players want certainty. What do they want certainty about?
Well, I mean, I think there's a number of different things they want certainty about. They want to know if they're going to play. I mean, there are the bottom tier teams that, some would like to play. Others, as we've heard Golden State kind of say publicly, they're good with kind of wrapping this thing up. There are teams, and you heard Damian Lillard say what he said to Yahoo earlier, players want to know if they're coming back. Is it going to be meaningful, or are they just coming back to satisfy television obligations? And that's a big part of this. I mean, I think if there weren't these these obligations to regional networks that the NBA either has to fulfill now or deal with down the line, we'd probably be closer to a 16-team playoff and just go from there. But, I don't think players want to come back just to, be part of this whole process of satisfying financial commitments. So, that, and of course, there's the certainty of the safety protocols, which in and of themselves, Doug, I don't think have been fully fleshed out.
Yeah, look, the Damian Lillard thing. So for people who are just joining us, Damian Lillard said, look, we don't have a chance to play in the playoffs. I'm not going to play, which is interesting because I've talked to a lot of NBA people who are like, man, that would suck if they let the Trailblazers have a shot because now they're healthy. They're 3.5 games out, whereas Memphis had played better for them for the season. What do you think they end up doing with the playoff teams? They go just playoff teams, or do they go play-in?
It's there's a difference of opinion on both sides. I wish I could be more specific with this, but there's every person I talk to offers a different assessment of what they're hearing and what Adam Silver is going to do. Now, there's a strong push amongst a lot of people to at least give those Western Conference teams a chance, to find a way to give Sacramento, Portland, and New Orleans a chance to get in. All those teams are 3 games back of that final spot in the Western Conference. And if you come back for 5 or 10 games, at least you give them a mathematical chance to do it. So there's some momentum to only having those teams brought back to the mix. Teams with some kind of mathematical chance to make a run at this pushed back into the mix. But to your point, Portland could be a different team. Right now, the 76ers are going to be a different team. Utah is a different team because Bojan Bogdanovic is done for the year. There's just a lot of different unknowns with all this and variables that, if I had to, and this is just guessing at this point, Doug, honestly, if I had to guess, at some point the NBA is going to throw up its hands and say, look, we're sorry, we'll deal with the regional network stuff later, we'll deal with the teams that might be pissed off later, we're going 16 teams into the playoffs, we're going to preserve each round best of 7 to try to give us a legitimate champion, and that's what we're going to settle on.
How do they do the exhibition games? How do they do the ramp-up games? You can't go 0 to 100.
No, you can't. And, there's been some talk about doing just scrimmages, but inter-squad scrimmages between teams, extended training camps, extended practices, and maybe, if you bring all 30 teams back, you can have, 5 to 10 regular season games. But you're right, that's a legitimate concern. You can't just go from a training camp where guys are quite literally shaking off the rust. When you think about it, there's going to be as much time is going to pass between the start of this pandemic and when the league comes back to roughly the end of the finals in mid-June for when the league would start in mid-October. And in between the normal set of circumstances, you have players working out every day. They've got their personal trainers, they're in gyms, they're improving their game, they're improving their bodies. For the most part, these guys are doing nothing. And, a handful of them are able to work. Mike Conley's got a home gym that looks like my high school. But, the rest of them are doing, basically what you and I might be doing on a regular basis. So they do have to find a way to bridge that gap between, going through the motions in training camp and dropping players into the most competitive atmosphere there is.
Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated, NBA insider, joining us. Doug Gottlieb Show here on Fox Sports Radio. How important is it for LeBron to win this one?
I don't know. And I wrote about this a little bit today. For all the reasons we just kind of spoke of, the difference in teams and how this really isn't a continuation of a season, but an entirely new thing. There's going to be a large amount of people that view this season as an asterisk season anyway. And God knows if LeBron wins it, we're going to be discussing this, ad nauseum till the end of time. Especially if he wins 1 or 2 more and encroaches on that Jordan-Kobe territory. And then it becomes just a cluster bleep of discussion about, all this stuff. So I don't know. It certainly would be significant. And you can argue that LeBron winning a championship in this type of environment is an incredible accomplishment, one of his most incredible accomplishments of all time. But there are going to be a loud chorus of people that say, look, it shouldn't count. The NBA season wasn't what it was. And God forbid somebody tests positive that's a major player in the postseason that shakes things up. I don't know that it moves the needle for him all that much.
Okay, so if a guy does test positive, okay, you deal with it, right? You don't shut it down if one guy tests positive, do you?
No, and Silver's made it clear, and he's right, that there's no point in coming back if that's the only solution to all this. I don't, though, think that there's a solution that's been agreed upon by the union and the league yet as far as what to do. I mean, I think the NBA, from the people I talked to, would probably model their protocols after what UFC allegedly did. God knows what they actually did, but what they said they did, which is just pull the fighter out, quarantine him in a hotel, and go on with the event. Now, the NBA will have to take more precautions. They have to test more people and, make sure that player X didn't infect everybody, particularly some of the, older members of coaching staffs, which really has some people in the NBA concerned. But, they might take a 2 to 3 day break to get the testing out of the way, but they're not going to shut it down. They will find a way to move forward that allows as minimal disruption as possible.
Chris Mannix joining us here on the Doug Gottlieb Show on Fox Sports Radio. Okay, so the Warriors clearly don't want to play, probably won't play, and they'll be in prime position to get the number 1 overall pick, and they're going to get, both of their stars back next year, one of whom, Steph Curry, had already come back and played. Best guess, is their plan to use that first pick, or are they going to try and package it with Wiggins and make another bold move?
I think they'd like to package it. And look, being honest, I haven't checked in with anyone there in the last few months as this is kind of played out. But my sense all along was that they'd like to package it and get a player that fits the timeline better. Now, it was curious, and I've written this before, it was very curious that they moved Russell when they did, because I've always felt that no matter what you think about D'Angelo Russell, I thought he was a better option to package than Andrew Wiggins is. Unless, look, if they had the last month or so to be able to rehabilitate Wiggins some and, show that he was a better player outside of Minnesota than he was inside, then okay. But I don't know what the market is for Wiggins at this point, not with that contract and the inefficiency and the obvious inability to be a number 1 guy. I just think, look, I think they'll try to move it, and who knows who's going to be available when the dust settles on all this. But I just thought they missed an opportunity by getting rid of Russell, because Russell in that pick, to me, had much more value than Wiggins in that pick.
Yes, I think Wiggins is about fit. I think they want to keep Wiggins. I think he's about fit because they know he's great as a third best player. He's great as a best or second best player. He's not, and you need a guy that embraces that role. He does make a lot of money. I
don't know how you move that pick though, Doug. Like, it's just financially it's hard. Like, if you can't package it with another player and if you're not going to move off one of your core guys, like it's just hard to find a player that fits that salary structure unless you're getting a guy that a team wants to give up on that's still on a rookie deal.
It's a very good point. It's a very interesting point. Chris Mannix, our guest in the Doug Gottlieb Show on Fox Sports Radio. The Dream Team tapes are out, and now there's tape of Michael Jordan saying, I told Rod Thorne I wasn't going to play if Isiah Thomas plays. Take a listen. This is Jack McCallum McCallum in the Dream Team tapes.
No matter what you heard, there was never much of a chance for Isiah Thomas to make the Dream Team. For this reason mainly, Michael Jordan did not want him. I wrote that back in 1992 because a source close to the situation, no, not Jordan himself, told me that was the case. But Jordan's reaction to the question, did you keep Isiah off the team, was either angry, no, dismissive, no Isiah questions, please, or coy, hey, I didn't pick the team. So when I went to interview Jordan for the Dream Team book in 2011, I wondered how I would nudge the conversation over to Isiah Thomas. But against all odds, Jordan went there himself, suddenly and without warning.
And when they called me to ask me to play, Rod Thorne called me and said, Rod, I won't play with Isiah Thomas on the team. He assured me, he said, you know what? Chuck doesn't want Isiah. So Isiah's not going to be a part of the team.
If you didn't hear, he said, I don't want to play if Isiah Thomas is on the team.
Doesn't that, to me, the bombshell is that his own coach, Chuck Daly, didn't want him on the team.
Yeah, I've talked to Jack McCallum a lot in the last couple of weeks about this specific topic because I've been writing a little bit about it, and he's been helping me along. And, there's two ways to look at this. One, why is Jordan just brazenly lying on this documentary when he knows this audio is probably out there? And even if it wasn't, he's got a pretty credible writer in Jack McCallum saying that he did in the book and obviously writing it in the 90s. I think the bigger the bigger story is certainly a combination of Chuck Daly and Jack McCallum, who was, the general manager of the Pistons at the time, and allegedly this heavily influential member of the USA Basketball operational staff. If the head coach of the team isn't going to the mat for him, and the general manager of the team isn't going to the mat for him, and I've talked to a number of people. I obviously wasn't covering it back then, but I've talked to a number of people that were around it back then. Neither one of those guys went to the mat for Isiah Thomas. And you're right. Like Michael Jordan saying, "I'm not going to play without Isiah," is almost to be, with Isiah is almost to be expected. If Chuck Daly, the head coach, and Jack McCallum, this influential member, and his general manager are not going hard after him, that to me is a bigger statement.
Yeah, and then you have Magic, who was his best friend, and they had a falling out as well.
Yeah.
Well, and they had a falling out as well at that point in time. So you got all of these issues as of why he was really, really not on the team. Still fascinating to look back, nonetheless. Do you think that it? I mean, a lot of people have said it's not really a documentary. How do you view it now that we've had kind of a week to catch our breath?
I mean, it's entertainment. I mean, I had one general, and look, I'm not knocking it. I thought the director did a fantastic job of storytelling. I mean, it's great. I was riveted by it for 10 hours. But I had one general manager tell me it was like a movie. You had a hero in Michael Jordan, a villain in Jerry Krause, and other pieces in between. And I thought the depiction of Krause was just wrong. I mean, I think there's and this, but there's a generation of kids that are 18 to 30 that probably watched that for the first time and didn't know much about Jerry Krause because he disappeared after the Bulls and thought that Krause was something of a caretaker. He wasn't. I mean, he had one of the best drafts in NBA history that came away with Pippen and Horace Grant. He made the Bill Cartwright trade. He ultimately pulled the trigger on Dennis Rodman. I mean, go down the list. I mean, the guy had some whiffs for sure, and certainly if he had just shut up, a little bit more, his perception would have been a lot better. But I mean, the guy was a Hall of Fame general manager for a reason, and the depiction of him as kind of this, fumbling, bumbling, buffoon that Jordan, mocked on a regular basis, I thought was pretty bad.
Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated. Follow him on social media as well. Mannix, you're the best, man. Hope you're well. Thanks so much.